Good evening, everyone. So, how many people, once upon a time in India, there was a British administrator who wanted to solve a problem. The city had lots of snakes. And so he thought the best way to solve the problem is to, let's just say, anyone who kills a snake and brings it to the government house will pay them some money. It worked for a while, because people would kill snakes, take them to the government house, and get paid. Until all the snakes were finished. So what do you think Indians did? The people in the city, what do you think they did? They started growing snakes because the incentive was still there. So the first decision was a bad decision. What should I incentivize? Now, when human beings adapted, they made the second really bad decision. They decided immediately to terminate the program. So you are a poor Indian guy, you've got a farm of snakes that 2 weeks ago were worth some amount of money. Suddenly overnight, they are worth nothing. What do? You let them go into the wild. And so, in trying to solve a problem, and a string of really bad decisions because we incentivized the really wrong thing, they ended up creating what? More of the problem. I start with this story because one of the things I'm going to try and talk about in this program is what kind of activities should we incentivize in order to drive IPv6 deployment? And it's a tough question and I'm going to need your help. So, here's the conundrum. My job at AFRINIC essentially is, I go around different countries and I train network engineers how to design and build IPv6 networks. And yes, all of those countries in green, I've been to them. But together with the team at AFRINIC, on this continent, we've trained more than 10,000 people on how to design and deploy IPv6 networks. Here's the context. As at this moment, IPv4 at AFRINIC is less than, we just have about 84% of a /8 left. That was about 2 weeks ago. So we've got a problem, a resource, a critical resource is dwindling, and yet that's IPv6 deployment. Can you see that red? Nothing. Nothing. So I once saw a quote that says, all successful people start with one of two beliefs, that the future can be better than the present, and I have the power to make it so. It doesn't seem like that's working here. Because after so much training, free training by the way, from AFRINIC and AFRINOC, this still isn't happening. So that was last July in Nairobi. I was sharing a stage with someone at a conference like this. So to understand, so he made a statement that really got to the core of my being because it shook me. Because in 2007, I was a network admin at one of the largest universities in sub-Saharan Africa. And I was considering how do I deploy IPv6. The first case study I read was by a guy called Mark Tinker. Some of you might even know him. IPv6 deployment at Zimbabwe Online. So we shared a stage in Nairobi, last African Internet Summit. And when they asked him, what do you think about IPv6 deployment? His response was, customers just don't care. His body language is, I could almost feel like, frustration plus, I want to give up. So I want you to imagine, this is the guy whose case study I read the very first time I thought about IPv6 deployment. And I was sitting on the same stage with him, and I could feel, that amount of frustration. They always say, don't meet your heroes. It's better for your heroes to be dead. I don't want you to die, Mark. But you get the frustration. So something needs to change, right? Because, the face of the face of the growth of the internet, the future is IPv6. And so if this picture is any indication of where we are going to, we're doing a really bad job. And the AFRINIC's IPv6 program, the objective is to change this. Of course, on that map, there's only one guy that stands out, Zimbabwe. And I'm thinking, Zimbabwe, really? Because when we say Zimbabwe, I'm pretty sure we've trained fewer people in Zimbabwe than in all other countries. If I were to do the number of people trained per capita, South Africa and Nigeria would be at the top of the list, not Zimbabwe. So I'm thinking, whoa, is this really worth the, should we even be doing this? So, the last mile, of course, the difficult part is this. How do we push content, push IPv6 to the users and also to the users and also to the content. And I'm happy that my boss, Alan Barrett, spoke about the different kinds of metrics, things that we could look at. Of course, there's the Google stats, there's the AFRINIC stats, and also there's the Alexa stats. But we have to be careful because, data can really be spun to tell any story. There's some kind of data, some kind of stats that are useful for measuring, but not necessarily useful for driving action. And so, what are we going to do? What is AFRINIC's IPv6 program? It's simply, what can we do to actively drive IPv6 deployment on the continent? So, here's a conundrum we face. We've done training, lots and lots of trainings for network engineers. And we are not seeing the results that we are hoping, or were hoping for. So we could go and sit in our cave in Mauritius and come up with some solutions. Or we could say, maybe we should try something different. It turns out that there's a certain community on this planet, internet entrepreneurs. They've really mastered the art of not building something until they are sure that someone wants it. So this goes beyond training. And that's the approach that we're going to be taking here. So we are going to be very clear. Who are we looking to work with in this program? Engineers and managers. Engineers because they are the ones who are going to do the deployments. They are managers because I've always suspected for a long time. Okay, I don't need to suspect. If you work in a company, nothing really can happen if the managers don't say so. Which is why one of the most important things for any initiative to succeed in a company, if it doesn't have management approval, management buy-in, is just not going to work. So, we'll work with engineers and managers, and also with governments. Why governments? At least in Africa, the governments of every single country account for at least 25% of the GDP. They're a really big consumer of ICT services. So if we can get them to take the lead in doing IPv6 deployments, because they don't have the inhibitions of we've got to make money today or tomorrow, then that could start, pushing the needle in the right direction. Now, whatever gets measured gets improved. So how will we measure the progress of all of this? To measure progress of all of this, we won't start with the stats because, like Alan Barrett said, look, you're not going to see anything on the Google stats or the AFRINIC stats if people are not even announcing the BGP prefixes in the first place. Or people don't even have those BGP prefixes to start with. So we want to have three different kinds of measures. From the infrastructure part, we want to measure on a quarterly basis how many people even have the BGP prefixes. How many people are advertising them, and then content, how many websites have come online for V6 and all of that. So if you're able to measure that on a quarterly basis, then there's something that can drive action on the parts of network engineers and managers. And then also be able to do it at a country level, because I've been to I've spoken to people in different countries. They say, yeah, Tamon, those beautiful stats from AFRINIC, from Google, they're two cores. Tell me, what does this mean for my country? Can I pick something specific for my country that can drive action or activity or projects on a quarterly basis, on an annual basis? So we're going to be working a lot with that, along with our colleagues in the research and innovation department. Of course, everything else, like I said, is going to be, it must be proven. We will do training, a lot more training for network engineers. We'll start doing training for managers to think about the strategy and the planning. We'll do things like hackathons, simply, where you bring people in a room and in 24 hours, see if they can develop something that's immediately useful to the community. We'll try and set up a help desk at AFRINIC to help with the small problems. So some of you might know, we recently had this survey, which we're going to talk about the results tomorrow. What is your #1 IPv6 deployment problem? And it's amazing, lots of people who said, I can't create an IPv6 addressing plan. I mean, that's shocking. So, I mean, those are simple problems. We want to be able to have a help desk at AFRINIC. You can call someone, we go through a video conference and solve that problem in 2 hours. That is a solution known problem. So help desk will solve something like that. Also certifications, because there's got to be something in it for the engineer, there's got to be something in it for the managers, and of course there has to be something in it for the company. And also we want to look at awards. And this is where my Indian snake story comes in. What should we award? What kind of behavior? Individuals or teams? I know it's not going to be money. It's going to be things like fellowships so that you can attend AFRINIC Internet Summit or SAFNOC or the IETF. Okay. So, all of these things, they must pass one test before we continue them. We shall go back to those board of metrics. We shall measure the success of all of this by how much they drive a metric on a quarterly basis or half semi-annual basis. If it's not working, we drop it and come up with the next idea. So, what more can we at AFRINIC do to help you guys deploy IPv6 as engineers or as managers? Thank you very much. Questions? No questions. Merci beaucoup.